Alright, fucking intro, let's get right into it. Today we're getting unhinged. So, consider the following scenario. It's 2022. You're still recovering from COVID-19. You just got out of your first relationship after being together for 2.5 years. It was your first time being in love, and you thought you were going to be together forever. But then, shit went to fuck, and now it's over. And you two have gone your separate ways. You just moved out on your own for the first time after transferring to a new university, where you were commuting an hour in each direction the previous semester. You're all alone now. But then, you're at work, and then they hired a new girl. Nothing of note happens other than sometimes she'll text you random things every once in a while asking questions and shit. Then, y'all work together longer, get a little closer, and before you know it, you're talking almost every day. Y'all are telling each other personal things and secrets that two coworkers do not need to know about each other. You find out she lives in the same apartment complex as you, and then she's trauma dumping while drunk to you on the phone. Then she comes over drunk to your apartment because a guy in her student organization tried to get her drunk to take advantage of her. And then you listen to her talk because you're trying to be a supportive friend and because you're concerned for her well-being. Then one day, she asks if you want to make out with her, as a joke. And then you realize she wasn't joking. And then things take off from there. This shit happened to me a couple years ago, and I'm here to tell you it's a trap. You need to get the fuck out of there before it blows up in your face. Just a disclaimer, I'm going to be going over the topics of sex, sexual assault, abuse, hypersexuality. I'm not going to go into detail or anything, but these are topics that are going to come up later in this story. I don't even know how I got into this situation. The last thing I was even thinking about was a new relationship. I was still recovering from the last one I was in. Honestly, that's a whole separate video on its own. That whole relationship was a Shakespearean tragedy just on its own. I rebounded. After getting out of my first relationship, there was a massive void in my life that I was trying to fill. On the surface, I wanted to move on from that relationship, so I wasn't really considering even getting into a new one this soon. But subconsciously, I missed the feeling of being in a loving relationship. You know that shit people say when you're single and they talk about how, it happens when you least expect it? In this case, I seriously did not expect any of this. And funny enough, this person I was with also had just got out of her relationship around the same time I did. This should have been the first red flag, but I found that out much later. Unfortunately, it was a much worse experience for her. Her ex-boyfriend's a piece of shit. He did some unforgivable shit to her that I don't even think I can say on YouTube. But, you could probably take a guess. And she was traumatized by these events, but I didn't have a problem with it. I was trying to be patient and understanding of her situation. One result of this, though, is that she was kind of reluctant to jump into a new relationship, and I get it. That makes sense. But, she still did want to see me. And, I also had similar concerns considering I just got out of my previous relationship, not that long ago. So I was just trying to see where this goes. And then at this point, nothing went wrong. We were actually getting a lot closer, doing pretty well for about a month. Alright, so what went wrong? One night, she went to a party, she got drunk, and then she ended up making out with some other dude at the party.
Oh, you've gotta be kidding me.
And then she told me about that the next morning. While I appreciate her telling me this because I would much rather know the truth than be getting cocked behind my back, it was still a deal breaker for any potential this situation had of moving forward. We were never in a committed relationship, and I don't even know what to call this form of relationship. I think most people would just call it a situationship. So I'll do the same for lack of a better word. And some of you watching might hear this information and be like, Ruffian, y'all weren't even together, so why are you even mad? You can't be mad about it. And to that I say, just shut up. Just leave me the fuck alone. I don't care. I'm allowed to be upset by this situation. I never would have done this to her, so I don't see how it's unreasonable for me to hold her to the same expectations that I hold myself. Alright, just a side note, I don't get the concept of dating multiple partners and then picking the one you love the most and then becoming an exclusive relationship at some point. Modern dating's pretty weird. There's not really a set of rules, so do what you want, I guess. But for me, if I decide I like you, I'm going to keep putting effort into the relationship. And if I don't see this moving forward at all, or this working out long term, then I'm just going to end it. And even if I kind of like you, but there's still something missing, then and even the possibility of getting more from someone else, then at that point I realized it's not going to work out, and I would rather just end it right there than lead the other person on while still getting more from someone else. Even if we don't have a title or are committed or official or whatever the fuck you call it, I still wouldn't cheat. That's just fucked up. And any justification people have for cheating can be solved with the same or even less effort and betrayal by just ending the relationship. So even if this girl and I weren't, committed, I still consider it cheating. I was still betrayed.
I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart.
What's even more ironic is that she told me she feels the same way, which is, I don't really get. In one of our conversations, one thing she said is that drunk words are sober thoughts, and that's something I also agree with. That's a rule I live by. She even tried to tell me that she doesn't want to date multiple partners and that she's just a one-person person.
Liar!
But then, what happened? I can only speculate why she did that, but she couldn't even give me a direct answer because she didn't know why she was the way she was either. Now, if this girl and I met during one of our lectures or while we were out in public or at the gym or anywhere else, then this would have been the end and it wouldn't even have been a big deal. I never would have had to interact with her again and we would have both moved on much sooner. But, fortunately, she was my coworker, so I just see her all the time. No one at work ever found out about this though, because I was not going around telling anyone, and she was not either, and I am very thankful for that, because man, shit could have been so much worse. I would have had to find a new job or just find a whole new place to live or something. This was the beginning of a vicious cycle where we would just not talk for a while. We would try to ignore each other, but then we would be forced to interact at work, and we would still be respectful to each other, and then we would get more comfortable around each other again, just because, we have to be around each other, so why not make it easier, right? Then she would message me outside of work, and then things would seemingly go back to how it was before.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Then we might go out to eat or something. This happened once or twice as her way of trying to apologize for me. But, officially it wasn't a date because, we weren't dating. We weren't together. We weren't in a fucking relationship together. Of course, we would still sleep together again at some point.
Delicious.
Alright, all jokes aside, maybe that is the only thing that really kept me coming back, because this was honestly the best part of our relationship, whatever it was. And honestly, that's just tragic, because even in this aspect of our relationship, I was still putting in more effort than she was, to say the least. And unfortunately, I was just giving into the temptation, despite how in the back of my mind I knew that I can never forget what she did. And at the time, I guess, I was still trying to figure out if I could even forgive it. Then it would all fall apart again, because I would then realize, I can't forgive her betrayal, and I realized that we could never be together, ever, in a serious relationship. And then she would also start to push me away after she got what she wanted, I guess. I don't know, she would pull me in closer, and then she would get what she want out of me, and then start to push me away. And I think she liked the chase more than the companionship. It was kind of weird. But then, after this, we would stop talking again for maybe a few weeks until we were forced to interact at work again. And then the cycle would just start again. So this went back and forth basically every other month, 1 month on, 1 month off. And cumulatively, we were probably together for not even half a year. But, this still lasted over the course of 2022, basically the whole year. Eventually, at the end of that year, I broke it off one more time. But this time, she actually respected me enough to finally stop fucking messaging me. And then a few months later, she finally moved back to her home and left my life for good. And a few more months later, I graduated from university and moved back home. Oh, one correction. She didn't stop messaging me just because, she respected me. I found out years later from someone else that when her and I stopped talking, she actually entered a real committed relationship with another guy that we were both working with.
How much more betrayal can I take?
And then they lasted maybe 9 months until they broke up due to quote-unquote cultural differences. Personally, I think one of them cheated, or that she told him her dating history. When I first found this out, even after 2 years, I was still kind of pissed, at least initially. Because it kind of showed me that she was at least capable of the commitment. But I was able to quickly, get over it, because I realized, now it doesn't have any effect on my life. How does my opinion of her change at all? And even then, I also kind of felt bad for the guy she was with, even though honestly he's kind of a player too, so they're kind of perfect for each other. So yeah, pretty fucked up situation. But I did learn a lot about myself and this person. I at least know what to look out for in future relationships. And while this experience was just
outrageous. It's unfair.
I don't regret that it happened. So before she did what she did, there were already some red flags. When her first relationship fell apart, her ex-boyfriend told her a bunch of, stereotypical abuser shit, like, she wasn't desirable and that no one was gonna love her again, just regular verbal abuse bullshit. It's pretty fucked up. She then decided to compensate by, hooking up with a bunch of dudes. And, I understand, as a concept, why she was that way. Because she was trying to regain control over, her body and, that aspect of her life. And even then, I would find out, whenever her and I would go on our breaks, every other month, she would then, most of the time, have a different guy in between getting with me. She had plenty of backups, I guess. It was sick shit. Another thing that was kind of weird is that she could only perform while she was intoxicated. Most of the dudes that she was with didn't give a shit, and that also led to her being put in other bad situations. I won't get into that. I would refuse to do anything with her unless she was sober, even if she was, quote unquote, consenting, or at least trying to. And it took her a while at least, but, she eventually was able to open up to me and, trust me enough, and then, we would be able to be intimate while she was sober. She was also just not able to hold herself accountability for things. I can't think of any other time she verbally said, I'm sorry to me. Generally, she was kind of just selfish. She was putting her own needs first all the time, rarely meeting my needs. There was no compromise. Even after she got into a new relationship, it seemed like she was kind of overcompensating by rushing into a new one. Kind of like how in The Sopranos, after Christopher gets Adriana killed, he gets into a new relationship and marries and has a baby with some other woman. And I can't even tell you that woman's name. Who gives a shit? David Chase probably can't even tell you her name. But in these situations they felt guilty, so they were trying not to make the same mistake twice, and they were trying to rush into a new one and do everything quote unquote correct this time. So, at the time all this shit went down, I hated her fucking guts, dude. I was so pissed all the time, bro. My mental health was going down the fucking drain, I was angry. I was just trying to move on with my life, and I had to see this fucking whore every day at work. Even after all she put me through, though, and the hatred I felt for her, today I can at least think more rationally and sympathize with her. Kind of pity her overall, her life, lots of tragedy that I haven't even mentioned. Yeah, of course, though, I still wish I wasn't involved with her fucking character development, though. This is probably the lowest point in my life. Shit was fucked. I was recovering from basically 2 relationships at once since I kind of rebounded into the second one after my first one ended. While all this shit was happening, though, I was getting stressed out at work because, I hated that fucking job and school. Just trying to graduate and get the fuck out of there, But, at this point, it's over now. It's been 2.5 years since this relationship ended, and, unfortunately, I have not been into another one because
I can't find pussy anywhere.
in all honesty, though, I think giving myself, a lot of time to actually, cope and recover from this loss from both my first relationship and that rebound was the best thing I could have done. Imagine me getting in a third relationship and getting fucked up even more. That would be awful. But, now I think I'm genuinely ready to move on, and I know what I'm looking for. Now, while what she did to me was just bullshit, I also know that I have blame in this situation. I allowed this shit to carry on for way too long. I should have stuck better to my boundaries and not tolerated this behavior. I treated her way better and gave her way more chances than I should have. I was clinging on to someone who didn't value me as much as I wanted to be valued, and I settled for this rather than dealing with just being alone. All I know is that I will never, ever fucking tolerate this type of treatment again from anybody, and I will never date a coworker again, especially never ever rebound with one. Some things you just have to learn the hard way. That's one thing I learned. I definitely should have known all this shit, and people had definitely given me this type of advice, but I just didn't get it until I experienced it. That's about all the insight I can offer. I hope I can help at least one of you out there avoid doing what I did, or if you're currently in this situation, then you know where it's probably going to lead and you need to get the fuck out of there right now. It's easy for these things to fall apart fast. If you're someone who happens to have met the love of your life at work, that's really amazing, and I'm happy for you. And honestly, I think in this case, you should keep it up, if you find, a good one. to work with. It's just my experiences don't align with yours, unfortunately, and that definitely ruined any potential of me ever even attempting this again. But, you know, just be careful out there wherever you are or whatever you're doing. And remember, just, you know, don't hook up with your coworkers. You know, don't shit where you eat, and don't dip your pen in company ink. But yeah, this video is probably going to be way longer than my ex's body count.
This guy ever stop breaking balls?
Hear what I said, don't.
This video is probably going to be way longer than my ex's body count. So if you liked the video, be sure to like the video, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. But yeah, that's about it. See ya. Oh, also, any single ladies out there who won't break my heart, be sure to hit me.